honor, so we are most pleased to bring in a numbers expert, Professor of Economics Emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, Professor Richard Wolff. Hey, Professor, thank you for being with us.
Glad to be here.
I want to start not just with wages, we'll get to that, but I want to get your take on how GDP could be impacted if the shutdown were to continue through the quarter. What do you think?
Well, I think it's already having its effect. It's going to have an effect. Very hard to measure, and the debates over exactly how big it is are kind of strange, since the effects of this go far into the future. Let me just give you a couple of examples. People who have debts, which is most Americans, those debts are keeping accumulating. If you don't get a paycheck, if you're one of the hundreds of thousands of people doing without, or if you're a small store where those people live and so you're not making the sales you normally do, you can't pay off those debts, which means you have interest accruing. You probably don't have the cash at home, so you're using your credit card more, and that means you're accruing debt, which costs you interest. All of that will go into the future. It will make people with whatever income they have less able to spend because more of that income is going into paying off their debts. So it's very hard to estimate. But we know the economy is slowing down in the United States. We know it is doing that in Europe and China as well. We have very bad negative signs of a recession coming. The last thing on earth you want is to give a blow to an economy that's already sputtering, and that's what this shutdown is doing, and it's just accumulating week after week.
Yeah, and you know, folks may be able to get by a little bit, miss one paycheck by doing something, like you say, ramp up their credit cards or even take out money from their 401ks, which will cost them in the long term with taxes. And a lot of people will end up eating less healthy food, by the way, because you can get the calories at, I won't mention any name of Mickey D's, but you'll go someplace, but you won't eat as healthy. Anyway, let's move to wages. I want to make sure we get to that today. We always love having you, but we got to get to wages. The national minimum wage in the United States is only $7.25, and that's a floor, but 18 states are increasing it this year. California will add 50 cents this year to $11 per hour, but California is not the highest minimum wage. It's Washington State, which is also increasing half a dollar to $11.50 per hour. The raises will possibly impact about 4.5 million workers in the U.S., but the federal minimum wage has not been increased for 8 years. There was a lot of talk back of increasing it when Barack Obama was president, but the Republican Congress wanted nothing to do with it. Nada. Professor, is an increase needed, and what do you think will happen going forward?
Absolutely. I can't think of anything that is more urgently needed than raising the minimum wage. $7.25 an hour is a travesty. It's immoral. It's unethical to make human beings work a full life of time and effort and earn that kind of money. What does it say to Americans that some of our states, like Washington, have a minimum wage that's not just higher, it's over 50% higher, because the good people of Washington don't want to do to their working people what the rest of the country, or a large part of it, are willing to do. And as you point out, if you look abroad, you will see that in a number of countries around the world, many of whom are not as wealthy as the United States, the minimum wage is more than double what it is here. I mean, what's going on? This is a society that could be generous and make a much better community for all of us by giving people a decent minimum wage, and yet we are at the back end of the list of countries that are doing it. Last point. One of the ways you stimulate an economy one of the ways you stimulate an economy is give people more purchasing power. People earning $7.25 an hour. You give them a $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 an hour increase, they will spend all of that money. That will create demand and other jobs. So you're not just helping them who deserve and need it most, but you're helping the whole economy. It trickles up, if you like, if you help people at the bottom, and that's both more moral, more ethical, and more economically effective than giving to the top, who need it least, and hoping it trickles down, which it rarely does.
And just let me ask you briefly, because we only got a little bit of time. I mean, this is an issue the world over. I mean, we talk about inequality, but I mean, Australia, I mean, you were really pointing to it, $15 an hour. Luxembourg,
right.
$14.80. I mean, this is not just a U.S. issue. This is an issue all over. Even in France, at $12.60 an hour, more than the U.S. That's 967 euros. Doesn't seem like enough is being done, does it?
Absolutely. And again, in a society where the majority of Americans say we shouldn't have the level of inequality that we do, so we know the majority of people support it, and we're already doing very poorly by the people at the bottom, Lord knows it's overdue to raise that minimum wage and lift this society up by helping the people who need it most.
Professor, thank you as always. We never have enough time, but we always get the best stuff from you. Thank you, Professor Richard Wolff.
Thank you very much, and look forward to talking with you again.